Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Nate here. And whether you see them as brave heroes fighting for the freedom of their homeland, or little more than a gang of short-sighted bandits hoping to prop up a dictator, there's no denying that the Stormcloak rebels are one of the Elder Scrolls V's most influential and iconic factions. Ferociously fighting to break Skyrim free of Imperial rule and turn it into its own independent kingdom, these passionate Nords claim that the Empire lost its right to govern their province when it surrendered to the Aldmeri Dominion 20 years ago, and agreed to outlaw the worship of Talos. Ulfric Stormcloak, their founder, leader, and namesake, has already declared himself High King, and by the time the events of Skyrim kick off, around half the region's Jarls have already risen up for his cause. Love them or hate them, the Stormcloaks are synonymous with Skyrim itself. And you better believe that, like everything else in this game, they're surrounded by countless secrets, Easter eggs, and hidden facts that even the most dedicated of Dragonborns often miss. So today we'll be taking a look at 5 things you probably never knew about the Stormcloaks of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Starting off, today's video is, ironically enough, going to begin not in Stormcloak territory, but instead, the Imperial-aligned capital of Solitude, specifically at its Temple of the Divines. According to the game's lore, the Temple of the Divines is said to be the most grand religious building in all of Skyrim. And inside, we can find a shrine dedicated to each of the Elysian gods. We can find one for Akatosh, another for Arche, one for Julianos, Kinnereth, you get the idea. In total, there's 8 different shrines. But, interestingly, there's 9 different indentations. You'll notice one shrine is missing. This, of course, is the shrine that was originally for Talos, before his worship was outlawed. Of course, as already mentioned, following the events of the Great War, one of the conditions the Elven Aldmeri Dominion set for peace with the Empire was their abolition of the worship of Talos. The elves considered Talos particularly offensive, as he was a human that ultimately ascended into godhood, a concept they just found absolutely disgusting. Plus, when he was a human, he did literally conquer their homeland, which really ticked them off too. Anyway, it's implied that after their peace treaty with the Dominion, the Empire must have had the Shrine of Talos removed from this temple. Well, if the Dragonborn sides with the Stormcloaks during Skyrim's Civil War, and wins the Siege of Solitude, their questline's final mission, after the Stormcloaks have taken over the city, if you wait a couple of days for the rebel to clear, and return to the city and enter the Temple of the Divines, you'll find that the Shrine of Talos is now back. Yep, the Stormcloaks restored it to its rightful place. Additionally, an even more subtle, though not any less incredible detail, is that the High Priest of this temple, a Nord named Roland, will in dialogue stop referring to the religion as the 8 Divines, and start calling it the 9 Divines.
As High Priest of the 8 Divines, I bid you welcome. As High Priest of the 9 Divines, I bid you welcome.
Sadly, he doesn't offer any specific conversation where he explains everything that's changed. These are just really slight alterations in his speech. Nonetheless, I found these minor changes to be pretty neat, particularly because just how low-key they were. Bethesda never explicitly says that the Stormcloaks are going to put the Shrine of Talos back. There's no dialogue that asserts that. It just kind of happens, as you imagine it would. And so, the biggest temple in Skyrim just got a little bit bigger. For our 4th spot, let's get on out of Imperial-controlled Solitude, and instead head on over to Windhelm, the divided, beating heart of this whole revolution. Here, there's a lot of internal tension, as Windhelm's Nordic population has developed a bit of a nervous attitude towards their Dunmer neighbors. Apparently, the Nords allege that Windhelm's Dark Elves aren't doing enough to support the Stormcloak cause. They're frustrated with an apparent neutrality, and some even suspect that a few of the Dark Elves might be working with the Empire in secret, as spies. Or, even worse, maybe a few Dark Elves are planning a violent revolution of their own. Now, of course, we players can investigate this matter a little bit on our own, We can speak with many Dark Elven citizens, look through their homes, explore their neighborhoods, and nothing really indicates any of them are acting in a particularly disloyal fashion. Yes, many are taking a neutral stance in this whole war thing, and some even do admit that they're a little bit sympathetic towards the Empire. None are actually helping Imperial forces. There are no spies, and there's certainly no elves planning a violent uprising of their own. Well, no elves, except for maybe one. Meet Ambrose Rendar. He's the owner and proprietor of the New Nissus Corner Club, a small tavern that largely serves Argonian and Dunmer clientele. He is by far and away the most anti-Stormcloak character we can meet in this entire city, possibly even the entire game. Without even directly entering dialogue with him, we can overhear conversations Mr. Rendar has with his patrons, and in almost every single one of them, he finds some way to be critical of Ulfric or the Stormcloaks. He constantly tries to rally up Argonian dockworkers, saying they're being underpaid. When he speaks to his fellow Dark Elves, he's often critical of them for working for Nordic families, and expresses his fear to many guests that if the Stormcloaks win, they're going to expel all non-Nords from Skyrim. In our own dialogue with him, he gets even more hostile, openly expressing his hatred towards Ulfric Stormcloak for not caring about the needs of non-Nords. And overall, it just seems this is a very angry guy. Frankly, I'm quite surprised he hasn't been arrested yet. We know from looking in the dungeons of many Stormcloak-aligned cities that some people have been arrested for merely criticizing Ulfric, so the fact that this guy's somehow gotten away with it blows my mind. Nonetheless, while Ambrose is antagonistic towards the Stormcloaks verbally, he denies actually taking any actions against them. He promises he's not a spy or anything like that. Though, there's a chance that these promises are already being broken. Because if we head on over to the New Nissus Corner Club's attic, players can find an incredible sight. A full set of Imperial Legionnaire armor lies on a table, in front of an Imperial flag. And if looking at this doesn't already make you question Mr. Rendar's allegiances, perhaps the most damning item you'll find, next to all this Imperial armor, is a copy of the book, The First Hold Revolt. I'm unable to read all of it. This is quite possibly one of the longest books in all of the Elder Scrolls, but essentially, it tells the tale of an event known as the First Hold Uprising, which occurred in the city-state of Firsthold on the Somerset Isles in the Third Era. The context for what was happening is actually fairly simple to explain. Firsthold was a majority High Elven city. However, thanks to a series of diplomatic marriages and some alliances, it ended up with a Dunmer, Dark Elven queen. Many of the High Elves in the city just couldn't stand for this new development. They feared that the Empire's influence over their town was growing just too high. And soon enough, the High Elves revolted. Led by a specific group of particularly proud monks, they attempted to storm the palace and take out this Dunmer queen of theirs. Long story short, the revolution actually failed miserably. They were crushed by Imperial and Firsthold forces, and relegated into the history books. It seems that Ambrose is in possession of this book, viewing the events of the First Hold Uprising as a parallel to the one going on in Skyrim. Much like Firsthold's High Elves, Skyrim's Nords view the Empire's influence as growing too high, and now they're revolting. And perhaps Ambrose is once again hoping to see these forces crushed. Additionally, others have proposed that maybe he's looking at this book through a very different context. Maybe this Dunmer is considering a revolution of his own. Whatever the case, being in possession of a pro-Imperial book, a full set of Legionnaire armor, and an Imperial flag in the city of Windhelm paints a very incriminating picture of this person, and makes it very hard for him to deny that he's not supporting the Empire, as he does so often. In fact, if he was caught with this, I'd be surprised if he didn't earn a death sentence. I guess, at the end of the day, maybe there is a single Dark Elf that Windhelm's Nords have been right about, after all. Coming in at number 3. Oh, this one's a little short, but it's hilarious. So, if the player wants to join the Stormcloaks, when you speak with Ulfric Stormcloak and his right-hand man Galmar Stonefist, rather than immediately accept you, they'll first want to give you a bit of a test. You'll be sent to an island in Skyrim's northern shores, and ordered to kill an ice wraith, and return its fangs back to Galmar, to prove you did it. Ulfric reasons that if you can kill an ice wraith, you're probably a good enough fighter and should join the club. Now, quite frankly, this seems like a very impractical method of recruiting people to an army, if I do say so myself. I mean, you could just put them in a training program, but I digress. The name of this initial quest is Joining the Stormcloaks. Fairly simple. However, the German translation of Skyrim calls it something a little bit different. I'm not even gonna bother trying to pronounce it, so here's the name on screen. When translated from English, this quest's German name isn't Joining the Stormcloaks, but instead, Aren't You a Little Short to Be a Stormcloak? This is a hilarious nod to Star Wars, Episode 4, A New Hope, when Luke Skywalker disguises himself as a stormtrooper and meets Princess Leia, who says, "Aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper?" upon their first interaction. Upon digging a little bit deeper through the game's German translations, you can find that whoever was doing the translating did rename, like, multiple quests to include funny references kind of like this. So, expect more in future videos. Anyway, moving on. For 4th spot, while they technically are honoring the terms of their peace treaty with the Dominion, it's no secret that the Stormcloaks' rivals, the Empire, aren't exactly fans of the Thalmor, and they are actually expecting to go to war with them pretty soon. I mean, General Tullius, the top of the Imperial brass in Skyrim, blatantly states at the conclusion of Skyrim Civil War questline, if the Empire wins, that he can't rest just yet. He's anticipating another war on the horizon. And Legate Rika even mentions that the entire reason there's only a single Imperial Legion in Skyrim, the reason the Empire's not sending more troops, is partially because so much of their military is dedicated to defending their southern border in preparation for a Thalmor attack. So, not even the Empire likes these guys. And, of course, Ulfric himself shares similar concerns. If the Stormcloaks win, he also mentions preparing Skyrim for a war, anticipating some sort of Aldmeri Dominion retaliation. Though, something you might find funny is just how ambitious the Stormcloaks get with their war plans. Speak with Galmar Stonefist, and he'll state that while he expects a conflict with the Aldmeri Dominion, he doesn't seem to anticipate being the one on the defensive. No, Galmar states that he expects to be attacking the Somerset Isles, the Thalmor's homeland, directly.
We will rebuild Skyrim into the land she once was. When we are done with that, we will take our army to the Dominion and show those pointy-eared bastards not every man is fit to be their slave.
In further dialogue, Ulfric Stormcloak seems to indicate support for this plan as well.
Stop what? Taking Skyrim back from those who'd leave her to rot. When we're done rooting out the Imperial influence here at home, then we will take our war to the Aldmeri Dominion.
So it looks like the Stormcloaks, unlike the Empire, don't anticipate fighting a defensive war, but they think they're gonna go to the Aldmeri Dominion's capital and teach the elves a lesson themselves. Now, while very inspiring, this does seem to be a highly optimistic and ambitious plan. The Aldmeri Dominion does have what appears to be a very, very competent military, seen as they pretty much single-handedly defeated the Empire. So the likelihood of a newly independent Skyrim, which is now recovering from both a Great War and a Civil War, somehow launching an offensive on their homeland territory just seems like a work of fiction. No matter, while perhaps not grounded in the most realistic assessment of current military circumstances, I do admire the Stormcloaks' ambitions. And finally, last on our list, while the Empire uses a dragon as its symbol, the symbol of the Stormcloak Rebellion is that of a bear. We can find this animal plastered across their shields, banners, and signs. The woodland creature has become pretty much synonymous with an independent Skyrim. However, have you ever asked yourself, why? I mean, in the case of the Empire, the dragon's meaning's pretty obvious. The Empire was founded by a dragonborn emperor, and it claims to have the divine protection of Akatosh, the dragon god. But why choose a bear? Well, the answer's fairly simple. The bear is the household sigil of the Stormcloak family. In fact, one of Ulfric Stormcloak's most common nicknames is the Bear of Markarth, a title he earned after helping put down a rebellion in the capital of the Reach shortly after the Great War. The next question to ask, though, is why is the bear the sigil of the Stormcloak family? And, believe it or not, we have the answer. Skyrim's official game guide, which was written by Bethesda Game Studios writers, confirms that it comes from Ulfric's dad, a man named Hogue. Apparently, like his son, Hogue was the Jarl of Windhelm and Eastmarch, and developed a bit of a reputation for having a fiery temper. In response to this, many started calling him the Bear of Eastmarch. Hogue considered this to be relatively flattering, and rather than demand people stop mocking him this way, he instead took the bear as his house's new sigil. And thus, 40 years later, and one son/High King later, the bear would then become not a symbol of Hogue's anger, but a symbol of an independent Skyrim. And with that, we are going to wrap up. 5 things you probably didn't know about the Stormcloak uprising of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Thanks so much for stopping by, everybody. Which of these tiny details or Easter eggs did you find to be the most intriguing? And what Skyrim or any other game trivia do you know of that we've yet to cover? Please, please, please leave a comment down below. Those have become very helpful. Again, thanks so much for watching, and hope to catch you all in my next video. Peace out, everyone.